Mic is on, okay. So welcome back, everybody. So we're gonna start our last session, the third session of the business forum. A little bit late, sorry about that. We got a special guest here today.
Yay!
Yay! By the way, all the way from Korea.
Yay!
Last night, middle of last night. Yay! So okay.
Last night.
I mean, seriously, like it's a really privilege to have him in this classroom and also in Tokyo and the TJ. So it's I'd like to introduce Josh on P1. I don't have to explain who he is, but maybe you can introduce yourself, Josh.
Sure. Thanks for coming. Are you guys all students of ours? Everybody?
Some.
Except for some of you guys, right? Yeah. So thank you for coming. I'm friends with Paro. I was asked to come here 4 or 5 months ago. I didn't know that we would play. I mean, we as in my team's playing today. So I'm skipping 2 of our important matches to be here. So I just sent my players some messages. They're playing as we speak right now at 3 o'clock, League of Legends, and another game of ours will be played at 8 p.m. So a little later. So yeah, so I'm excited to be here. I'm excited enough to skip a very important match. It could be the last season, the last match of the season for us. So hopefully there will be another one. But yeah, that's me. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of T1. I'm based out of Seoul, Korea. I do come to Japan pretty often. I came, I think, like 4 times last year, came twice this year. And I kind of got the general idea of what we're gonna talk about today. But, I would like to kind of like pick your brain and then, hear about what you want to hear, what you want to, I don't know, like get out of this session, so I can cater my, stories or whatever to your needs. So I'm gonna pick up on some of you. Are you a student here? Yeah, I see that you're representing. Yeah. So what are you looking? I mean, what are you majoring in?
I'm majoring in communications.
Communications, gotcha. And you're taking his class.
Yes.
God,
Also,
why?
I used to last
Why?
semester.
Did you? Why did you take the class?
Well, because I'm very interested in the field of esports, and I'm very passionate about like learning stuff related to esports. So this class was like the on spot.
Good.
It was amazing. One of the best classes I've taken.
Sounds good. Yeah. So if you have any questions about the industry, please ask me. I can answer as much as my knowledge can permit me. So that's good. How about you? I know you're not from TJ. Yeah. You're researching something about esports, right?
So my research is not in this university. I'm from University of Tsukuba. And like I came here from Brazil, and I'm researching about mental health in esports.
Cool.
And like my research in Brazil was about anxiety indicators in esports players, and I want to make like a brief research in Japanese reality.
Yeah.
And when I knew about this event, I came just to see what's going on, like what happened, this kind of things.
Sounds good. Well, obrigado for coming.
Oh my God,
That's the only Portuguese that I know. Besides, there was this song that was very, very popular 5-6 years ago. Hello. No, it's not.
Assim você me mata.
Of
Of course, everybody knows this one.
Portuguese song that I know. That's fine. But yeah, thank you for coming. Ask me questions later, and then if there's any question that you want to ask individually after the session, I'll be here for a while, so you can grab me then as well. I'll just get one more. You got me, Wi-Fi password, so
okay. I'm Jason.
Jason, thank you for getting me the password so I can watch my games. What are you trying to get out of the session? What do you do? What are you majoring in?
So I'm majoring in psychology.
Psychology, awesome.
Yeah, and
so you guys can talk afterwards, right?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in it. Yeah.
The first one that I know about is you too.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. I'm just really interested in the industry as a whole because I studied something called IO psychology, which is like how the industrial organizational psychology, and that really led me to like a lot of different, it made me curious to a lot of different industries. And I've personally just worked in different industries in Japan and in my home country of Singapore. So I've had experience in workforces.
Gotcha.
And after working in a lot of places, I just realized I don't really enjoy work that like is not something I'm really passionate about. So I'm
Hey,
here
who
just
likes working, man?
yeah, I know, right? It sucks, but that's why I'm interested in gaming,
Yeah,
and that's why I'm really interested in this learning the field. I have a hobby in.
that's cool. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good segue to, how I view my work, what I do. And, Bauer gave me some questions so we can, go by the questions too, but then
Yeah.
speaking of, enjoying your work, I honestly enjoy my work very much. And it is a dream come true because I've been a T1 fan all my life. We've been around for 20 years or so, and we're one of the oldest esports organizations in the world. I think this month, April, marks 20th anniversary of T1, which is pretty long, dude. And I've been supporting this team for the whole time. Obviously, older than 20 years, a lot older than 20 years. But being able to work at a company that you've been a fan of, puts a different perspective on work. And I actually enjoy my work very much, and then that's why I could put in the long hours that I do. I work almost every week more than 100 hours. It's a lot of hours. I work at least 6 days a week, but then no one's making me, do that. So I would love to tell you guys more about that. Anyways, over to you.
No, that's a good story. I always wanted to, ask you about like how'd you get into the industry? That's sort of like the opening question. Was it like, you said you've been a fan for 20 years, but was it like a long-term plan that you really wanted, you planned it in, or was it something like it worked like by chance, or was it like
so it kind of like happened for me.
Uh-huh.
And before I go on, please, ask me any questions, in the middle. If you want to interrupt me, you came in the middle. You can ask questions in the middle too.
More people coming in.
So yeah, please ask me any questions. If you want me to clarify anything, you don't have to wait till the end. Just raise your hand and then just ask the questions. How did I end up in T1? I've been a T1 fan, but then there wasn't an opening to get into T1. But T1 spun off from what used to be SK Telecom T1. So SK Telecom is the biggest telecom company in Korea, and it used to operate in multiple sports, baseball, basketball. They got out of baseball a couple years ago, but in their portfolio was T1. And then in 2019, they spun it off by forming a joint venture with an American company from Philly. Actually, Comcast is from Philly. Temple's from Philly, so there's my
connection right
my
there.
sister lives in Philly, so there's some Philly love right there. But then when the joint venture was formed in 2019, I had a friend of mine at SK Telecom that gave me word that they're gonna be recruiting, so I applied and got in. It's very condensed story, but then that's how I ended up. It was a long process, but yeah, that's how I got in. Just applied and got in. But I was very excited because before T1, I was working in a completely different industry. But when I heard about this opening, I thought, oh, this is something that I had to do.
Yeah.
So I did it, and I am very happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I found a lot of us actually working in the esports field right now. They actually didn't work in the esports field at all before. So it's really, something happened. We're here. That's also good to know.
It's a new industry,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like this era thing as well, because you're not, in one industry for 20, 30 years as your parents' generation used to, right? In Korea, we say your major or college major is only a memory, or only, it's not something that you actually work in. I mean, you could, right? You can become a psychologist, right? You can become a researcher or whatever. But then I studied, Russian politics.
Very relevant.
I translated something for my CEO yesterday into Russian. But besides that, I don't really use Russian all that much. Everything that I did in college is only a memory. But that is not to say esports lacks depth. But honestly, it does lack depth in the sense that it's very new.
Do you see it growing much from now?
Growing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do.
there are some concerns with it.
There are many concerns about esports. A lot of people did say that esports is experiencing a winner right now. But it doesn't really pertain to us like T1 as much because I think when the hype was building up during COVID mostly,
Yeah.
a lot of VC money came into esports, especially in the West, especially in America.
Yeah.
And I think those orgs spent their money a little bit too. I don't know. They're just like throwing. Yeah. So that's not the approach that we took, and we have a longer history. So we are kind of immune from all the shenanigans that are going on. At the same time, doesn't mean that we're gonna carry the entire industry. We would like to, but then you have to kind of think about the entire ecosystem of esports. And I do see, a good potential just because I think I mean, you can look at esports as a subset of either sports or gaming. Is esports a subset of gaming, or is esports a subset of sports, or is esports a subset of something else, right? If esports is a subset of gaming is an ever growing industry. It's bigger than
Cinema.
music, cinema, all those entertainment forms combined, and esports takes up only 1 to 2% of gaming. And if the percentage of that could grow to be like 10-15%, I see plenty of room to grow. That's the short answer. But yes, esports is still kind of new. Even though we're 20 years, we're one of the, if not the oldest company in esports. So the industry itself is, no more than 21 years. I'll get to you one in a second. So it does lack depth a little bit, but there are a lot of smart people adding depth to esports. So going back to our question though, I think that's why you don't have to major in a particular field to work in esports. You can be anything if you can add value to esports.
Like to know you better in your personal perspective,
Uh-huh.
what made you interested in esports? Was a profit environment, or like was a personal?
Esports, I came to love it as a fan. I grew up watching esports. I grew up playing a lot of games, which my parents hated. And I'm kind of exploring a lot of different things about gaming in Japan right now. And one of them is a PC cafe. I know you guys have something kind of similar here, but not really. In Korea, PC cafe, or PC bar as we call it in Korea, was sort of like an escape from your parents, because your parents don't want you to play games at home. But I really want to play games, so we would escape our parents, play games at these PC bars, right? And then being able to play a lot of games there, and then seeing the best versions of those gameplays on TV by professional gamers was, shocking to me. So since then, I've been following esports, watching a lot of games, playing a lot of games too. That's how I, came to love this industry. Cool.
I had one question in mind that I really want to ask today, and it's a bit of an abstract question. And I think, since you're a COO, I thought it's a proper question to ask. Like, I've been a fan of T1, as you can see, right? And all that, right? So,
I'm not wearing anything.
dude, you're wrong, man.
My bad.
Like, what do you think? What makes T1 like T1?
What makes T1 T1?
Yeah. Obviously,
Well, I'm just kidding.
obviously.
I think, well,
Right.
yeah, is that the question?
It's really a question, I was trying to figure it out, because I think so just to give you a little more,
Yeah.
to me, think of it, everyone knows Faker, but before Faker, for me, it was Slayer Boxer, Slayer, right?
Boxer.
So in the StarCraft,
Yes.
so all these legendary players are all T1. And I don't think that's a coincidence, and
No.
I'm thinking there gotta be a reason to it, so, yeah, what's your take?
I think my answer will be very simple
Mm.
because our recipe for greatness is not a secret. The recipe is very simple. You gotta be great at what you do. That's the biggest and the best foundation to build something upon. All the great sports teams, we talk about esports being a subset of gaming or a subset of sports. If we look at the sports part, all the great sports orgs out there are great because they have great legacy, great performance,
Right.
Titles and championships. And I think that's the same thing for T1 as well. From the days of Boxer, I don't think you guys would know Boxer, but Boxer is this great player of StarCraft, which is what kind of began esports in Korea. And he's the one that first broke the $100,000 salary mark. And then he was like the biggest star before Faker in Korea. And then after Boxer, we had other great players that were world champions. So simply put, we were great at what we were doing. We won the most titles, and that's how we were able to build this brand that we have right now. Not a secret at all.
No, makes sense.
Cowboys, for instance. Do you guys follow the NFL? Anybody from the US? JR, you're from the US. Where are you from?
Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania. Where about?
Pittsburgh. So
Oh, yeah. So Steelers? Do you follow NFL?
A little bit.
A little bit, right? But NFL is American football, and America's team is the Dallas Cowboys. I don't really watch football that much, but I know that the Cowboys kind of suck. Right? They haven't won in a while, but they're still the most valuable sports org in the world because they had the legacy of winning a lot back in the day, and they built a great legacy afterwards. All the other sports orgs on the list of most valuable sports teams in the world, they all have great legacies. Like they had once built a dynasty or two. So I think T1 had the same thing.
Yeah. Any follow-up questions about it? Good?
Jason.
Yeah, I have a question based on just mentality since
Yeah.
working with T1.
Yeah.
Because now you're a CEO of
Yeah.
T1 and you start off as fan.
Uh-huh.
So just from your personal point of view, do you work for T1 as a fan who wants to support the org, or do you see it more as a business perspective now that you are working?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Is there a one that you think more of towards
I
these
think-
days, or?
Well, I'm not too sure if it's like a balance days. Like, am I 70% fan and 30% businessman? For T1, or the other way around? It's not like that. I think for me, I have a couple layers of my identity as a T1 executive, and I think the layer that forms the foundation. The level one of my T1 identity is as a fan. I think layer two is as a T1 employee. And then layer three, maybe it is as a T1 leader that has to lead the company in the right way, so that T1 would be as great as I would like it to be as a fan, at the foundation. If it makes sense. So.
Question. Did you have one? Okay. Did you have one?
No, I was just looking at my notes, so if you guys run out of questions, hopefully there's something somewhat interesting. Yes.
What is your relationship with the athletes, with the players? Did you talk with them before the games? And I really want to know more about
I'm
it.
pretty close.
Very close. I'm the third person I get to very close.
Really close.
I think we at T1 are a little bit different in terms of our relationships with the players and athletes.
Why is that?
That's something that I kind of prefer. Because in every kind of relationship, you have to have a certain like line or boundary. I'm not married. He's married. But I even between a husband and a wife, there's gotta be certain boundaries that you have to keep for each other, right?
Yes.
I think, in every kind of relationship, you have those boundaries. And I think, between myself, or between T1 staff and the players, we have some boundaries too, but as long as we keep those boundaries, I would like the relationship to be as close as possible. The reason being, who was here? It was Joe. Joe and Yukihiro. I've been told that they went to the same university.
Yeah.
And then, in Japanese, you have this term senpai, right?
Yes.
But I heard it's not really used that much in, Japanese colleges anymore. In Korea, we still use it, the kanji is the same, so we say 선배. So we would call a person who's older or who's in a, we would call them 선배. But then I heard that's not the case in Japan anymore. What's happening to Japan?
Ending quickly, man.
But my point being, that 선배 to like a younger, protege type of relationship is very important in Korea. So you form that kind of relationships in school as well as, in society, at colleges, at companies. But unfortunately for professional gamers, that they don't have the opportunity to form these relationships because a lot of them drop out of high school and then join, pro game teams, right? And then you would like there to be a continuity of careers so that your 선배 would be there to guide you along the way. But then it's not like that, it's a professional sport. So your 선배 can be traded at any time. Then you have that, discontinuity. So in a Korean setting, that is something that you kind of have to learn as a member of society. But because that's kind of missing from them due to how, the professional sports works are operating, I want to kind of be that, big brother figure to them. And I encourage my staff to be like, big brother, sisters to the players, as long as we keep those boundaries that are important for any kind of relationships.
But like even though you give them this emotional support to be with them, not only like professional.
Yeah. Dude, I spent so much money like buying them food. Every single one of them is so much richer than me. But it's okay because I think it's a Korean thing as well.
Yeah,
I mean, not just in Korea, dude. Like I grew up in the US, I grew up in Boston. And it's not always the case, but then a lot of times big brothers will, pick up the check for little brothers.
Right.
And that's what I do. The big brother doesn't need to be richer, but I think the big brother needs to kind of provide in a way.
Yeah.
So because I'm not the biggest, provider when it comes to the check sizes between me and the players, I would take them to less nice restaurants. Versus if Baker can take, his team members to a restaurant, he would take them to like, very expensive, Kobe beef restaurant.
Right.
I would take them to like a pork place. But still, I've been, spending so much money buying them food, and that kind of, contributes to the camaraderie, brotherhood, the kind of relationship that we have, which is more or less like, a brotherhood. That's just my philosophy. I just prefer
But
that.
that's different than I heard, and then I research about in the South Korea environment. That's why I'm not surprised a little.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing that to, again, I told you to your question, Jason, I have many layers to my identity as a T1 executive. I told you the first layer, the foundation is me as a T1 fan, and then me as a T1 employee, and me as a T1 leader, right? I'm building friendships and brotherhoods with my players. Yes, to lead the company in the right way, so our players can perform at their highest, and that they would feel comfortable and at ease to, do their jobs. But also because I want to be a good person to them, because I want them to not only be good players, but I want them to function as great human beings too. And then even if they may, go to another team, I want them to feel proud of T1, and then I want them to be better people. So that's why I spend a lot of money, taking them out to dinners. Yeah, because I want them well.
That was just to add on. I mean, that was the first impression that I got when I visited him at T1 headquarters. So I got to know him last summer, and then nicely invited me to his headquarters, and I visited there. And every single person you meet inside the building is employees and players. It's like big brother. Hey.
Yeah, but they kind of have to. 'Cause
I'm
the boss.
I'm trying to help you, right? Yeah. So I totally, and then it's helpful. It's a different type of communication, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's very, very. It could be an Asian thing. I don't know, but it's very. Shall we talk about
Jason has a question.
question?
Or are you just like stretching your?
Oh, no, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question?
Yeah, I have a question, yeah. So with that philosophy, I was just wondering, how would you take kind of like that and compare it to like how Western game orgs kind of operate? Like what with that respect philosophy, how would you kind of like?
I think Western game teams or esports orgs, differ, from team to team as well. Not all the game teams are identical. But then I think we can generalize a little bit, because if you generalize too much, you kind of lose the nuances. But then if you don't generalize at all, you cannot deduce any conclusion, right? So if you can generalize for the sake of making some kind of conclusions that could be meaningful to, I don't know, lead any organization in such a philosophy, we can kind of generalize that, yes, as you said, Western teams tend to be a little less personal, maybe a little more, I don't want to say transactional, but then it could be like, professional, if you want to put it, that way. I think it could work for certain, purposes. But honestly, it wouldn't really work with Korean players. But honestly, dude, I have a lot of American non-Korean players too. And, taking care of the players, I think transcends, nationalities or cultures, because we want them really well. Right. And then, honestly, I think it will pay back. I like to think longer term. And you can see that when a lot of our players post their playing career, end up coming back to T1. We talked about Boxer. None of you guys knew Boxer. Shame on you guys. He's, Gen Z.
I knew it.
But Boxer, who used to be our hero, is still with T1. When T1 took off in 2019, one of the first things that we did was to bring back Boxer as our content creator, and he's still with us. And a lot of the OG gamers of T1 came back to T1 to teach at our academy, to stream with us, to create content with us, to coach. So I want to think longer term. And if you think longer term, being a little more personal, and then, is better than, say, being transactional. Or because honestly, being personal comes with its difficulties too, because it gets a lot more difficult to, for instance, trade your player. It's very difficult. Power gave me a lot of questions, and one of the questions was, what's the biggest challenge or toughest thing that you face at T1? And for me, it is, saying bye to, my players and my staff. Sometimes I have to like lay off, some employees. That's the hardest thing and the nastiest feeling. And with the players too, it's not, sometimes, it's kind of different, because the players are still professional gamers. And when their skill set is not at the level that we expect of them, there's a future when we have to trade them, or, don't extend their contracts. And when you have these personal ties with these players, it gets more difficult. So it's one of the setbacks, but it's something that I think can be understood in the long term. So even if we, for instance, trade these players or say bye to these players, I'm still in touch with most of them. Like for instance, unfortunately, me and my CEO Joe had to sack 3 of our coaches in the past 4 or 5 years, which is not good. But then I still talk to 2 of them. I do say hi to one of them when I bump into him. So yeah, it's hard because it was more personal, but then I think there's a way to, manage that too.
So I guess like one thing I'm interested in is sort of like more looking closely into like player and talent management and like what are the steps you or just the org in general does to like maintain like proper mental well-being and physical and mental well-being and how that can also like affect performance.
Yeah, I think one, you have to be very systematic and scientific. And we learn a lot from traditional sports teams. So when it comes to mental and physical well-being and health, we bring in physical therapists and mental therapists once a month at least for everybody.
Once a month.
Once a month. And then on top of that, 3 to 4 times a week, each of our players, works up with a trainer, physical trainer, sent from Nike, who is one of our sponsors. So physical and mental health, we take care of using the latest, latest, what's the word? Not technology, like, trainers, professional therapists. So that's what we do. On top of that, building that personal trust and relationships with the players, I think that, also goes a long way. And that's the kind of support system we try to build among the players.
Yeah, getting a little deep in his question because I really find interesting. You said that you had like maybe once a month with a physical education person and a mental health person. With the mental health itself, if any player wants to be like more sessions, they can ask for this.
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yes, they can. That's the answer.
Thank you.
Some do more than once a month, but then like when it comes to like counseling, it's not like a mental therapy. It's more like counseling.
Yes.
It can never be the only thing that you do. Like say, you're from Brazil, right?
Yes.
Are you here by yourself or with your family?
By myself.
All right, by yourself, right?
By myself.
There's only so much that a counselor, if you see a counselor, if you need to see a counselor, can do without your family, without your friends, right?
Yes.
So a lot of these kids leave their families to dedicate their lives
To this.
to the gaming, right? And counseling can only do so much. So we have to build some kind of support system around them. That's why I want to be like a big brother to them. That's why I want my staff to be nicer, family type of relationships to these players. So yeah, I mean, counseling is important, and we have that, and they can get it more than once a month if they want to.
And
Physical, yeah, we give them personal trainers as well as a nice gym in the building, and also a physical therapist once a month. But then on top of that, we want to give them, the support system through being friends, being big brothers, giving them good food, et cetera, et cetera.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Has there ever been any like family visits hosted at the T1 headquarters for the
Yeah, we
players?
thought about that, dude. I thought about it, and when I first became COO, gosh, it's been 3 years. Can you believe it? So that was one of the first things that I wanted to do. Sort of like a homecoming for the families. And honestly, some of the players. of the players didn't want that for some reason. I wanted to get all the families together and then host like a barbecue party type of thing. But then some of the players kind of didn't want that, so I invited them individually. So the families come to the office individually, and we host them. But then we couldn't do like the whole family dinner type of thing because some of the players felt a little shy or didn't feel too comfortable. So you had a question?
Tie back into the family thing, about the disapproval of the family perhaps,
What about it?
the reason some of them wouldn't want the family.
I think, you know, I think some of them felt like, I don't know, a little shy, I guess, a little shy, and some, I guess, didn't like being compared in a way. And it's a complicated one, and I couldn't really get into the details, but it wasn't worth pushing for, you know what I mean? I wanted to do it for them, right? I wanted to do it for the players because I thought if the players saw the families, and actually, you know, a lot of the players deal with different personal issues within the families, and I can't get into the details. But if I want to do the homecoming for the families, for the players, but the players, or some of the players don't want that, then that kind of defeats the purpose. So we didn't follow through, but then we invited them, you know, separately.
So when you first started and first applied to be working at T1,
Yes, sir.
what was your original role? What did you apply for?
So I applied for, it's, is that the question or?
Yeah, and like,
Yeah.
there's like, what were the steps you took to get in your position now?
So it's a long and interesting.
The
story.
TLDR?
I don't wanna bore you guys, but then I first applied as a sponsorship coordinator. So if you look at a lot of esports organizations, one of their main revenue streams is sponsorships. And obviously you need to manage the sponsorships really well. Here at T1, right now, sponsorship is still one of the biggest revenue streams, but then merchandise sales have come along. I'm going off on a tangent, but I'll get to your question later. So we have diversified our portfolio of revenue streams so that we don't rely too much on sponsorships anymore. I think perhaps even this year, or definitely like next year or the year after, sponsorships, won't be the biggest revenue source for us. We're gonna have, either merchandise sales or fan experience, which I could talk about later, as the biggest revenue streams for T1. But when I applied to T1, I think, sponsorships was the biggest revenue source for T1, and then that's what I applied for. And it took a long time, dude. One of the difficult things about joint ventures is that you have to be approved by both parties. So I had to be approved by SK and Comcast. So I can't tell you which one, but then I was approved by one, but not the other. And in order for me to be approved by the other, it took about 7 months or so, which was very long, and I had kind of given up on it, and then I was doing something else. And at the last minute, literally, I was gonna sign with another company on a Friday morning, and then my predecessor, the COO, the late John King, who passed away unfortunately a couple years ago, he texted me 11 p.m. on Thursday, and then I was like, "Oh, do you want the job?" I was like, "Heck yeah!" And then I signed with T1 on that Saturday. So that's how I got in as a sponsorship coordinator. And then, it's a small organization. So, and then, from day one, I worked very, very hard. And then I got to be, becoming a business team lead. And then I was, working as the business team lead for a long time until my predecessor, the late John Kim, passed away, unfortunately, in 2021. That's how I got this job. So yeah, that's what happened. But how did I, get here? I mean, a lot of people helped me, obviously. My current boss, Joe Marsh, the CEO, he is like a mentor. And before Joe, the late John Kim was, like a godsend to me. taught me so many things. He has, paved the way for me in many ways. On my part though, I think what I try to do was I try to make my boss's life easy, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times you can complain about your bosses, or you can complain about, your desires and wants, but then I try to minimize that, and then I would do my work first and foremost, and then after that, I would think about, how can I make my boss's life easier? What can I do more to help his job, help with his job? And I think, my bosses kind of recognize that. So I was able to, raise in the ranks pretty quickly.
So this
No
some
question from.
Well, this is from UK Online.
Sure.
He's asking, I'd like to know this too. How do you build good team chemistry?
In chemistry, oh, that's hard. Oh gosh, it's hard. It takes time. It takes a long time, and then if you have the right combination of personalities, it would be easier. But then that kind of begs the question: what comes first? Like, is it your personality as a player, or is it your skill set? Right? What do you guys think? Like, team games are different from individual sports, right?
Yes.
When it comes to team games, though, let's all imagine that you guys are all general managers of any sports or like an esports team. Would you guys value skill sets more or personalities? All right, let's just see. Yeah, show hands. Skill set. Raise your hands. No one. Like 50-50. How about personalities? Everybody? Okay.
I think it depends on the team.
Depends on the team, but then it's very, very difficult to win a championship with personalities. It's very difficult.
But I feel like you can always work on skill sets. I feel like working on personalities.
Yes, you can work on skill sets, but only to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I actually had a different answer. I would figure that you would focus more on like if the players have similar philosophies surrounding the game, because that would encompass both their personality and their skill set to a degree.
You should be a GM, first of all, and live out the philosophy. Yes, yeah, but then it's very difficult to find like-minded players. And for me, I mean, I can only, answer that question from my perspective, from my experience, and I'm sure other orgs do it differently. But we try to find the best talents, first and foremost. But then if he because all our players are male, I'm just gonna say, he. Well, no one's offended by that, but if he's a jerk, obviously we're not gonna pick him up. And T1 has a reputation to live up to. So we cannot pick up anybody with a, background that has like, I don't know, whatever misconducts. But then primarily we focus on picking up the best talents and then find a way to kind of like build a chemistry within, that combination. It's very hard. You have to fight a lot, but you have to fight in the right way. You have to know how to make up with each other as husbands and wives do, which is something that I don't know about because I'm not married yet. But there's a lot of fights. You have to know how to fight well. You have to know how to reconcile. And you have and we did a lot of that too. It takes a long time. Yes.
Anybody want to talk about the Worlds last year? I want to talk about last year.
Worlds, I mean, I can actually do, I'm an open book, dude. I can answer any questions about the current situation last year, the year before.
Okay.
You haven't asked any questions, so. I'll take your
Since
questions.
you brought up the current situation, I think it's obviously there's a game right now. I mean, I've been checking
Who's
every.
winning?
It's close. It's 7-5. Dalmon's up with 2 kills, but it's close. It doesn't really at this point it doesn't matter. But there's been this whole situation with with DDoSing at the headquarters, it seems it's come out like that's been a big issue. How have you guys been dealing with that? And how has it affected?
I mean, Baker, kind of spoke out himself, so it's gotten, a lot of people's attention. It's been very, very annoying. And it's not just T1 that's getting affected, other teams are getting affected too. But I don't know how much you guys know about DDoS, but then, it can happen in many forms, but the essence of it is that there are these attackers that want to bother a certain individual or a certain team or many teams or many individuals. In other words, it's targeted. And who would be targeted the most, right? Whoever the attacker wants to target the most, right? And at this point, even though there are other teams that are affected, I can almost certainly say that T1 is the most targeted because we couldn't even sprint because we're getting DDoS attacks. So how did we deal with it? We talked to Riot a lot, and then we did many things such as changing the IP addresses secretly, and then getting super accounts from Riot to practice. Because whenever we scrimmed or whenever we try to play some solo queue, we would get DDoS attacks. But the problem with that was these super accounts, even though their IP addresses weren't exposed because those accounts were not known to the public. The MMR, I don't know if you guys know what MMR is, but it's like an ELO for your whatever. So that was kind of low compared to what our players used to have. So we weren't matched with the right opponents on the server. So we kind of complained a lot, and Baker kind of complained, and Riot agreed to boost their MMR. I mean, kind of keep it to yourself, I guess, but then we kind of needed that for them to be matched with the right level of opponents. So that's how we kind of dealt with that. And that's the current status. Yes, sir.
Talk a little about last year Worlds,
Yes, sir.
going to semifinals. I want to know just the whole vibe against JDG. Yeah,
Whole vibe.
yeah. Just what were the coaches thinking? Whole staff, all the players. Was it tense? Was it relaxed? How was it?
Does anybody not know about JDG? You don't know about JDG, right?
Not so
So
much.
some
No.
background story. You want to give some background? Yeah, information.
I mean, JDG, they're a pretty good team from China. Yeah, they were.
They look poised to win the tournament.
So
They looked good.
That's the best way to put it.
They won MSI. Yeah, they won
We're
MSI.
talking about League of Legends World Championship, and in the semifinals we played against JDG. And JDG is a Chinese team, and they had won every single tournament last year until then. So they called that the Golden Road because winning the last tournament would complete the Golden Road, and we met at the semifinals. And how do we feel? We felt very, very confident because our scrims were going pretty well. Our win rate in scrims was above 80%.
Oh yeah.
What's your question?
Did you win?
What? We won.
They won. They won the entire tournament.
Oh,
World champion.
Yeah. But then it was pretty dramatic because in the quarterfinals, out of the 8 teams that were in the quarterfinals, there were 4 Korean teams.
Oh yeah.
3 Chinese teams and 1 American team. And then in the semifinals, the 3 Korean teams except for us knocked out. And there were 3 Chinese teams and us. But then I don't know if so people who don't know League of Legends or JDG wouldn't know the significance of the following statement by Gumayushi, who is one of our players. He said before the match against JDG that we don't lose to Chinese teams.
Oh my God.
But it's a fact because we haven't lost to a Chinese team at Worlds the past 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crazy stat.
That is a pretty.
But honestly, like we do media trainings, with the players. Oftentimes, but media training shouldn't kill the personality of the players. They get to have some kind of personality to build their brand and then to, I don't know, entertain the fans and stuff. And with Gumayoshi, we gave him some guidelines as to what not to say. But other than that, it's a sandbox. He can say whatever he wants to. And when he said we don't lose to the LPL, we don't lose to Chinese teams, it was all him, not nothing direct.
But he was allowed to say this.
Of course.
Why not try hard forever
And
from
that is
now
to
on?
say that we felt pretty confident.
Yeah.
And that confidence is very important because we talked about mental and like mentality of the team. It's very hard to keep your mental up when you keep losing at the last minute. Because those of you who don't know League of Legends esports wouldn't know the fact that before World Championship of last year that we're discussing right now, we had 5 runner-up finishes in a row. Yeah. 5 runner-up finishes, man. It's rough. It's very rough with the same roster. And that's a pretty hard blow to your confidence in the chemistry or in the potential of the team. Because like when you finish runner-up once or twice, you can like pick yourself up and say, hey, we can do it. We just, didn't have the last piece. But then when you finish second 3-4 times and 5 times in a row, you get to think, you are inclined to think, hey, maybe we don't have that missing piece. We're missing that 1% to get us to the final, stage. And the most difficult thing was to overcome that. And the way we overcame that and got to, as I told you, that confidence that we had against JDG was, I personally believe in the process. I'm a process person. And I do believe, and this is something that you don't have to kind of like agree with me on, but I really believe in the process. And with the right process, I do believe the results will follow. But even though, this is the important part for me, even though the results don't necessarily follow, if you can show the fans, because we, do this for the fans, right? If you show the fans that we have the right process and there's something worthwhile about the process, we thought we could be proud of ourselves, and I thought the fans would be proud of us as well. So because we had the right process, because we were the hardest workers, I thought that was a pretty good story, from the process itself. The 2022 Worlds, we didn't win that one. We finished runner-up.
Yeah.
It was a very, very painful defeat because I can tell you that we worked the hardest. We worked the hardest, and DRX more or less stole the show because they weren't good all year long, and then they just peaked at the right time. They had the momentum. They came from the bottom to the top, and we fell victim to that. But I can tell you with almost 99% certainty, there wasn't any team or anybody who worked harder than us. I worked harder than anybody during the time, including the players and the executives. I was the first one into the practice room, last to leave. I slept like 2 hours a day for a month. I did everything. We did everything that we could do to make sure that we won, but we didn't win. So the process, sometimes doesn't lead to the result that you want. But then I think at the end of the day, any form of entertainment is about storytelling. Winning last year was a good story, but before that story, I thought even if the story doesn't end with a championship, I thought putting in that much effort, putting in so much of your energy and attention and like your everything to something that so many fans kind of look up to was a worthwhile story in and of itself. So we kept on pushing on that one. And that's why we felt pretty confident going up against JDG because we felt like we gave everything that we had. And the result kind of followed. So
Yeah, so
Jason, the only person that I know the first day.
so honored, but because from what you've been saying, you're really such a big support for your whole team. I was just wondering, for you yourself, how do you keep that mentality? How do you keep yourself striving towards all that?
Well, I mean, I'm older than a lot of those guys, right? And I've been through a lot of difficulties. I mean, I go to church, so faith helps a lot. A lot of our players are, they go to church. I bring them. I mean, it was Easter last week, so I brought Umayushi, Keria, Bang from the old days is another player. And two of our Valorant players to church. And it's not, I'm not telling you guys to believe in anything, but then having that anchor in your life helps a lot. For me, that's the anchor. For you guys, it could be something else. But for me, faith definitely helps, and having great people around me. And you gotta have those mentors in your life. And for me, it was Joe, my current CEO, and late John Kim, who was a mentor. When the enemy Nexus blew up, Weibo's Nexus blew up in the finals of World Championship last year. The first person the third set, when we secured our championship, the first person that I called wasn't my parents, was my late, my predecessor, John Kim's mom. So you gotta have those good people around you. So for me, that's how I take care of my mental.
First of all, T1 just won game 1, so that's great. Well, sorry, I'm gonna take it away from there, but I was just curious about, because usually with, I guess, I'm going specifically about League, but in general, or I guess it is mostly specifically League, but LCK and teams in Korea, there always tends to be players leaving to go to other regions or whatnot, but finally we have Reckless coming from the EU to T1, which is brand new. So I was wondering how that experience has been and if it's been tough and how you've been getting through that.
No, it's been a blessing. It's been very great. And before going to the specific case of Martin, that's Reckless. The reason Korea hasn't had a lot of foreign players was because of the language barrier for the most part. People do go to China to play there and they learn Chinese, but it wasn't like, it was just Korean players going to China for the most part. Some Vietnamese here and there. Taiwanese people, they speak the same language, so there wasn't any language barrier. Korea basically exported the best players to the world, to China, to America, to Europe,
To Brazil.
But other regions wouldn't come to Korea because we had the best players already, and also because of the language barrier. But Martin, Reckless, that's the tag that he uses. Reckless was special because he's a legendary player already, but then he wanted to come to Korea to learn from the bottom because he was changing his position. So he was an ADC position. It's a position in League of Legends. It's like, quarterback, whatever. And then he wanted to be like a linebacker or something like that. So he wanted to change his position to support. So he wanted to learn from the best. So he came to Korea. But it worked out because Martin has the same kind of mentality and work ethic as Korean players. He works very hard. And he works a lot. I mean, I don't want to diss Europeans because the Europeans that beat us, and especially in 2019, they were very good. The way they thought about the game was very different, and we could get very philosophical about how you portray the game. But anyways, I respect the Europeans, but then they don't work as hard as Koreans. And for better or worse, we do work the hardest. And Martin has the work ethic of Koreans or Japanese or Northeast Asians, which isn't always a good thing. But then Martin has that, so he fit in right away. And kudos to my GM Becker, who had the insight and courage to bring a foreigner to our league, and it's been a blessing. It's a great time.
Okay, guys, we're running over time. Maybe one last question before we finish it. Okay,
Got one more from UK Online.
UK.
Is T1 considering to take on any other games besides Valorant and League of Legends?
Yes. used to have like 7, 8 teams, but we terminated a lot of the programs to focus on 2 because our immediate financial goal was to break even, and I think we're pretty close to that goal. Hopefully achieving it this year or at least next year. But I feel pretty confident that we can do it this year. And getting to only 2 teams from 7 was a way for us to get to that goal. And I think since we're pretty close to that goal, we're thinking about expanding into other titles. I don't think that was a great question, but I don't think that was a great last question.
That's right.
So let's get a great
Alright,
last question.
Okay, so going into this year.
You can come up to me afterwards and ask me afterwards. What's your first of all, let's hear it. Last
Okay,
question. Yeah.
so going to this year, since this roster has already won a world championship,
Yes.
how do I word this? So has the work ethic ever diminished since you've already won a championship, or
Are you getting lazy?
yeah, are they getting lazy since they've won, or has this championship boosted them to work even harder?
They're not lazier, but it's harder.
Mhm.
It's always harder to maintain.
The expectations.
Yeah, so it's harder for them. Plus, it's not like we won world championship like DRX did. Not dissing on them, but then they just won it. But before that, they were nothing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not, it's
Factual.
I'm pretty close with the CEO of DRX. I'm not dissing on DRX. But T1 has been in every tournament possible. We made at least quarterfinals. Actually, we made every single finals except for one the past 2.5 years. It's crazy. The consistency of the team is crazy. That kind of wears out the roster, right? And I think we're at a point. So honestly, I know it's kind of online. It could be recorded. Maybe I shouldn't say it.
You wanna tell me after?
Sending out the.
No, we can turn down.
Nothing too crazy. Like I would love to win. I mean, I'm very competitive too, right? I don't want to lose. I want to win tonight too. But I told the players, you can lose tonight because we've been having such a long run. Missing the MSI would be terrible business-wise. It'll be terrible. We're preparing so much for the MSI. So missing that would be crazy. But from their mental perspective, and maybe for the longer term, it could be okay. I mean, I talk about these things with Baker too. And after we lost to HLE on Wednesday, I took the players out to dinner, and like Baker and I were saying, hey, maybe resting in April and May wouldn't be such a bad idea. And he was like, yeah, there's good in everything. So that's the general approach that we have. But that being said, it's just a lot harder to keep the team focused after winning something that big. But they haven't gotten lazier. When we were thinking about this roster after winning Worlds, which was right away, dude. It's so cruel. We won at like 11 p.m. We went to a celebratory dinner at like 1 a.m. We had a little bit of drink, not too much, until like 3 a.m. And then my big boss from Comcast came, so we went to another place to celebrate until like 5 a.m. I got into the hotel, and then dude, I got into the airport. He was hungover, so he shouldn't have taken aspirin, but he still did because he was so hungover. But I couldn't drink too much because I had to take it. Anyways, so like 7 a.m. I took him to the airport, and 9 a.m. I started negotiating with my GM on kind of his roster contract. But obviously we did the planning before that, and we signed our head coach in the middle of Worlds. And before we went into negotiations, we thought about that factor. Are these kids going to be motivated? Are they going to keep are they going to keep the fire going? Are they going to be burned out? We thought about all these things, but then at the end of the day, I do believe that sports, is a form of entertainment. You do want to make your fans' dream come true, and keeping a championship winning roster intact had never been done before. And we wanted to do it, and we wanted to take a bet. And we're taking a bet, and hopefully the bet will turn out all right.
I was so excited when I saw everyone was staying. I was like, oh, let's go.
Yeah. So they're working very hard, if at all, after finishing the 5 consecutive tournaments, runner-up, after winning finally, I think that trust kind of like cemented, and a lot of the players, not a lot of the players except for Faker, I think their respect for Faker grew, because they're like, oh my god, how was Faker able to do this for like 10 years? So, yeah, our mental is in a good place, but we are pretty tired from, being too consistent in the past 2 years.
Okay, I think that was a good last question, right? So, all right. Josh, let's give it away.